The accidental distress call. Captain HFY clicked his mandibles nervously as he watched the quantum communicator spark and smoke. The delicate crystalline structure that powered their long-range communications had cracked during the latest meteor shower, and now their research vessel, Gentle Current, was drifting helplessly in the outer rim of an uncharted system. "Engineering report," he chittered to his crew of 12, all members of the peaceful Veltar species. Their insectoid forms were perfectly adapted for scientific research, with multiple arms for delicate manipulation and large compound eyes for detailed observation. What they were not adapted for was emergency repairs in hostile space. "The quantum resonance chamber is completely shattered, Captain," replied Chief Engineer Meltha, her antennae drooping with exhaustion. "I've been trying to jury-rig a replacement using our backup crystals, but the frequency modulation is completely random. We're broadcasting on every possible channel across multiple dimensions." Captain HFY's hearts sank. They were 3 months into their survey mission of potentially habitable worlds when the meteor shower had caught them off guard. Their shields, designed for cosmic radiation and small debris, had failed against the unexpected bombardment of dense metallic fragments. Now they were stranded with minimal life support and no way to contact their home fleet. "What's our current position relative to known civilizations?" the captain asked his navigator. "We're approximately 40 light-years from the nearest Galactic Confederation outpost," Navigator Yilsen replied, consulting his star charts. "However, there are several uncharted systems nearby. The computer indicates possible technological signatures from at least 3 different worlds within a 20 light-year radius." The Veltar were members of the Galactic Confederation, a loose alliance of peaceful species dedicated to exploration, trade, and scientific advancement. In their 2,000 years of spaceflight, they had never encountered a truly hostile alien civilization. The galaxy seemed filled with reasonable beings who preferred negotiation to violence. "Continue broadcasting our distress signal on all frequencies," Captain HFY decided. "Perhaps one of these unknown civilizations will be willing to assist us." For the next 18 standard hours, the damaged communicator sent out a desperate plea for help. The message was simple and universal, encoded in mathematical sequences and basic pictographs that any spacefaring civilization should understand. A damaged ship, coordinates, life support failing, requesting immediate assistance. What the Veltar didn't realize was that their broken communicator was not just broadcasting locally. The fractured quantum crystals were creating dimensional rifts, sending their distress call across multiple layers of space-time. The signal was reaching civilizations far beyond their intended range, including several that would have terrifying reputations if the Veltar had ever heard of them. On the third world of a yellow star system, the signal was picked up by a military listening post buried deep beneath a frozen continent. The beings who received it were tall bipedal creatures with pale skin and piercing eyes. They called themselves humans, and they had a very different approach to galactic politics than the peaceful Confederation. Admiral Sarah Chen was reviewing fleet deployment reports when the communication burst through every speaker in the command center. The alien language was unintelligible, but the mathematical sequences and distress pictographs were unmistakable. "Analysis," she snapped to her intelligence officer. "Unknown alien species, Admiral. Ship appears to be damaged and drifting. They're broadcasting coordinates approximately 37 light-years from here. Signal strength suggests their communication system is severely damaged and broadcasting randomly across multiple dimensions." Admiral Chen studied the translation matrix her computers had generated. The aliens appeared to be peaceful researchers, stranded and calling for help. But her experience had taught her that first contact situations were never simple. "What do we know about that region of space?" "Largely unexplored, ma'am. Long-range sensors indicate several star systems with potentially habitable worlds. No previous human contact. The Admiral made her decision quickly. Humanity had learned hard lessons about first contact during their expansion into space. Other species often viewed humans as either primitive newcomers or dangerous aggressors. Better to arrive in strength and demonstrate capability than to appear weak. Alert the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. I want every available ship ready for deployment within 6 hours. Full battle readiness, but weapons powered down unless threatened. This could be our chance to establish relations with a new species. Ma'am, the entire fleet? For a rescue mission? Admiral Chen's expression was grim. Officer, we've learned that alien contact situations have a tendency to become complicated very quickly. I'd rather have overwhelming force available and not need it than find ourselves outgunned if this turns out to be more than a simple rescue. Within hours, the massive human fleet began mobilizing. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, 8 carrier vessels loaded with fighter craft, and dozens of support ships prepared for the longest-range deployment in human history. The fleet represented nearly 30% of humanity's total military might. Meanwhile, aboard the drifting Veltar research vessel, the crew was growing increasingly desperate. Their life support systems were failing faster than expected, and the recycling units that processed their atmosphere were beginning to malfunction. Captain, called Communications Officer Teak Vel, I'm receiving acknowledgement signals from multiple sources. It appears several civilizations have heard our distress call. Excellent! Captain Zexhi's relief was palpable. What are they saying? The signals are unusual, sir. Most are confirming receipt of our message and indicating they are dispatching assistance. However, the energy signatures suggest much larger vessels than typical for rescue operations. The captain wasn't particularly concerned. In Confederation space, it was common for multiple ships to respond to distress calls. The more help available, the better. How long until the first responders arrive? Based on the signal propagation patterns, I estimate between 6 and 10 standard days for the nearest vessels. What none of the Veltar realized was that their accidental dimensional broadcast had reached 3 of the most militaristic species in known space. The humans were only the first to respond. In a distant star system, the Krathxi hive mind was also mobilizing. These silicon-based creatures existed as a collective consciousness spread across millions of bodies. They interpreted the distress call as a potential opportunity to acquire new biological samples and technology. A harvest fleet of bioships began their journey toward the coordinates. Even farther away, the Zorak Empire received the signal. These reptilian conquerors had built their civilization on subjugating weaker species. To them, a distressed alien vessel represented either a new species to enslave or a potential threat to eliminate. Their battle fleet began moving toward the intercept point with typically overwhelming force. All 3 military forces were now racing toward the helpless Veltar research vessel, each unaware of the other's existence. The gentle scientists who had accidentally triggered this convergence continued their repairs, grateful that help was on the way, and completely unaware that they had set the stage for what could become the largest military confrontation in galactic history. As the human fleet entered hyperspace, Admiral Chen reviewed everything known about alien contact protocols. Humanity had encountered several species during their expansion, and the results had been mixed. Some had welcomed human contact, while others had viewed humanity as a threat to be eliminated. The Admiral was determined that this encounter would establish humanity as a force to be respected in galactic affairs. The race was on, and none of the participants fully understood what they were rushing toward. The Convergence. The human 3rd Expeditionary Fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the target system like a thunderclap of metal and energy. 48 warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with the harsh light of the system's star. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of her flagship, the heavy cruiser Indomitable, and watched the sensor readings flood her screens. Contact bearing 27 Mark 18, reported Sensors Officer Lieutenant Park. Vessel matches the profile from the distress signal. Approximately 2 kilometers in length, minimal energy signature. Life signs detected but weakening. Any other contacts? Negative, Admiral. The system appears empty except for the distressed vessel. Admiral Chen nodded, but something felt wrong. Her tactical instincts, honed by decades of military service, were screaming warnings. No civilization sent distress calls into empty space unless they expected someone to be listening. Maintain battle stations, but keep weapons powered down. Take us closer, but keep the fleet in defensive formation. Something about this doesn't feel right. As the human fleet approached the drifting Veltar vessel, Captain Zexhai and his crew watched in growing amazement. Their simple rescue request had apparently attracted an enormous response force. "Captain," whispered Navigator Yilson, "those are military vessels. Why would they send a battle fleet to rescue us?" "Perhaps they're simply being cautious," the captain replied, though his own antennae were twitching with nervousness. "Some species might consider unknown vessels a potential threat." Chief Engineer Meltha looked up from her repairs with concern. "Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures from those ships. Their weapon systems are far more powerful than anything in Confederation space. These beings have clearly prioritized military technology over peaceful exploration." Before Captain Zexhai could respond, the communication system crackled to life. A harsh, alien voice spoke in a language unlike anything in their databases, followed by what appeared to be translation attempts in several galactic common tongues. "Unknown vessel. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress signal and are prepared to render assistance. Please respond if you are able." The captain's relief was overwhelming. "Open a channel," he ordered. "Unknown human fleet, this is Captain Zexhai of the research vessel Gentle Current. We are grateful beyond words for your response. Our ship was damaged by a meteor shower, and our life support is failing." Admiral Chen studied the translation coming through her systems. The alien seemed genuinely peaceful and grateful, but her tactical officer was frowning at his displays. "Admiral, I'm detecting hyperspace disturbances at the system's edge, multiple contacts dropping out of FTL." The Admiral's blood chilled. "How many?" "At least 30 contacts, ma'am. Energy signatures are unusual, not matching any known human or alien designs." On the main screen, space began to shimmer and tear as the Krathsi Harvest fleet emerged from their bio-hyperspace. The sight was nightmarish even to hardened human military personnel. The Krathsi vessels were not built but grown, massive organic structures that pulsed with alien life. Their hulls were covered in sensory organs and weapon ports that looked disturbingly like mouths filled with crystalline teeth. "My God!" breathed Communications Officer Martinez. "What are those things?" Before anyone could answer, another section of space erupted as the Zorak Empire fleet translated into normal space. Their vessels were the opposite of the organic Krathixi ships, all angles and armor plating, bristling with weapon systems and painted in the blood-red colors of their empire. Admiral Chen found herself facing a nightmare scenario. 3 alien fleets, including her own, had converged on a single distressed vessel. The tactical situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. "Yellow alert," she ordered. "All ships maintain formation but prepare for combat. Do not fire unless fired upon." Aboard the Gentle Current, the Veltar crew was watching their sensor displays with growing horror. What had begun as a simple rescue had become something unthinkable. "Captain," stammered Communications Officer Tickvel, "I'm receiving signals from all 3 fleets. They're challenging each other's presence here." The Krathsi collective mind was broadcasting its intentions across all frequencies, the translation coming through as a cold, emotionless declaration. Biological samples and technological artifacts will be harvested. Other vessels will withdraw or be consumed. The Zorak response was equally chilling. New species will submit to Imperial authority or be destroyed. Primitive vessels will surrender immediately or face annihilation. Admiral Chen opened a channel to all fleets. This is Admiral Chen of the human fleet. We are here responding to a distress call from a peaceful research vessel. We have no hostile intentions toward any party, but we will not allow harm to come to innocent civilians. The response from the Krathxi was immediate and disturbing. Humans are classified as potential harvest material. Withdraw or face absorption into the collective. The Zorak Empire was equally blunt. Human vessels will submit to Imperial inspection. Resistance will result in immediate destruction. Admiral Chen realized that she was facing exactly the kind of situation that had led to humanity's military buildup. The galaxy was full of species that viewed strength as the only currency worth respecting. All ships. This is the Admiral. We have a peaceful research vessel under our protection, and 2 hostile fleets making threats. Rules of engagement are now in effect. Defend yourselves and protect the innocent. What happened next would be remembered as the Battle of the Accidental Signal, though the participants wouldn't learn that name until much later. The Krathxi struck first, launching biomissiles that writhed through space like living creatures. The Zorak Empire responded instantly with particle beam weapons that lit up the darkness. The human fleet found itself caught in the crossfire while trying to protect the helpless Veltar vessel. "Shields up! Return fire!" Admiral Chen shouted as the Indomitable shook under alien weapons fire. The human ships proved their worth in the chaos that followed. Human military doctrine emphasized adaptability and overwhelming firepower, and both served them well. Their kinetic weapons and plasma cannons tore through Zorak armor, while their point defense systems intercepted Krathxi bioweapons. But the humans had one advantage that neither alien fleet had anticipated. They were fighting to protect someone else rather than for conquest. This gave them a tactical and moral clarity that their enemies lacked. Captain Zexhai watched in amazement as the human fleet formed a protective sphere around his damaged vessel. These strange bipedal aliens were risking their lives for beings they had never met, facing overwhelming odds to protect a simple research crew. "Captain," called his engineer, "the humans are extending some kind of energy field around us. It's reinforcing our hull and providing additional life support." The battle raged for hours. The Krathxi bioships proved difficult to kill, regenerating damage and adapting to human weapons. The Zorak vessels were heavily armored and armed, trading devastating volleys with the human cruisers. But gradually, the superior human tactics and their defensive positioning began to tell. The turning point came when Admiral Chen realized that the 2 alien fleets were so focused on destroying the humans that they were largely ignoring each other. She split her formation, drawing both enemy fleets into firing positions where they would inevitably hit each other. "All ships, execute Maneuver 7. Draw them into crossfire positions." The human fleet scattered in a seemingly chaotic pattern that actually followed a carefully planned sequence. The Krathxi and Zorak fleets pursued, and within minutes, they were firing through each other to reach the humans. The result was catastrophic for both alien fleets. Zorak particle beams tore through Krathxi bioships, while Krathxi acid weapons dissolved Zorak armor plating. Soon, they were fighting each other as much as the humans. Admiral Chen pressed her advantage. "Focus fire on damaged targets. Coordinate with fleet tactical." One by one, the alien vessels fell. The Krathxi bioships, unable to regenerate fast enough under concentrated fire, began to die in space. The Zorak warships, their armor compromised by acid weapons, succumbed to human kinetic strikes. When the battle finally ended, debris from 2 alien fleets drifted through space, while the human fleet maintained protective formation around the Veltar research vessel. Admiral Chen opened a channel to the rescued ship. "Captain Zexhai, this is Admiral Chen. Are you and your crew unharmed?" The relief in the alien captain's voice was unmistakable. "Admiral Chen, we owe you our lives. We had no idea our distress call would attract such dangerous attention." "Neither did we," the Admiral replied grimly. "But that's what happens when you send signals into unknown space. You never know who might be listening." The New Alliance. 3 weeks after the battle. Captain Zexhai stood in the pristine conference room aboard the human flagship Indomitable, still amazed by what had transpired. His ship had been fully repaired by human engineering teams who worked with an efficiency that bordered on miraculous. The Veltar had never encountered a species that combined such advanced technology with genuine compassion for strangers. Admiral Chen sat across from him, along with her senior staff and several representatives from the Galactic Confederation who had arrived to investigate the incident. The formal debriefing had been completed hours ago, but the real conversation was just beginning. "Admiral," said Captain Zexhai, his antennae twitching with curiosity, "I must ask something that has been troubling me. Why did your people risk so much for complete strangers? The Krathxi and Zorak fleets outnumbered you significantly. By any logical calculation, you should have withdrawn." Admiral Chen smiled, an expression that the Veltar were learning to recognize as indicating humor or warmth among humans. "Captain, there's something you need to understand about humanity. We have a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. When we developed the technology to travel between stars, we made a decision about what kind of species we wanted to be." "I don't understand," replied Captain Zexhai. "Humans learned early in our history that strength without compassion is just tyranny," explained the Admiral. "We've seen what happens when powerful civilizations prey on weaker ones. We refuse to be part of that cycle." Confederation Ambassador Kelvash, an elderly member of the same species as Captain Zexhai, spoke up from his position at the far end of the table. "Admiral Chen, what you've told us about these Krathxi and Zorak species is deeply disturbing. In 2,000 years of space exploration, the Confederation has never encountered such aggressively hostile civilizations." Admiral Chen exchanged glances with her intelligence officer. "Ambassador, with respect, I think the Confederation has been extraordinarily fortunate. The galaxy contains many species that view peaceful civilizations as opportunities rather than neighbors." "How do you know this?" asked the ambassador. "Because we've encountered them before," replied Admiral Chen grimly. "Humanity's expansion into space hasn't been the peaceful exploration that your people experienced. We've had to fight for every system we've claimed, defend every colony we've established. The strong prey on the weak out here, and the only thing that stops predators is superior force." Captain Zexhai felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. "Are you saying that the galaxy is filled with hostile species?" "Not filled," corrected the Admiral, "but there are enough of them that peaceful civilizations need to be prepared to defend themselves. The Krathxi we fought were a harvest fleet, designed to strip resources and biological samples from weaker species. The Zorak Empire has conquered dozens of worlds by intimidating peaceful races into submission." "But why haven't we encountered them before?" asked Ambassador Kelvash. Human Intelligence Officer Commander Rodriguez answered that question. "Because you've been incredibly lucky with your location in the galaxy. Confederation space sits in a relatively quiet region, surrounded by natural barriers that have kept the predator species away. But as you expand your exploration range, you're going to encounter them eventually." The implications of this revelation settled over the Veltar delegation like a cold weight. Their entire worldview was built on the assumption that the galaxy was populated by reasonable, peaceful beings who could settle disputes through negotiation and compromise. "What do you recommend?" asked Captain Zexhai quietly. Admiral Chen leaned forward. "An alliance. Humanity has the military strength to protect peaceful species, but we lack the scientific knowledge and exploration experience that the Confederation has developed. Together, we could create something new in this region of the galaxy. What kind of alliance? A mutual defense pact to start. Humanity provides military protection for Confederation exploration and research vessels. In return, the Confederation shares their scientific discoveries and helps us map the peaceful regions of space. Ambassador Kelvash was clearly struggling with the concept. Admiral, the Confederation has always believed that violence is never the answer to conflict. How can we reconcile that philosophy with military alliance? Ambassador, replied Admiral Chen gently. There's a difference between using violence to solve problems and using the threat of violence to prevent problems from occurring. What we're offering is deterrence, not aggression. Captain ZXHY understood immediately. You're saying that predator species won't attack if they know they'll face overwhelming retaliation. Exactly. Peace through strength. The Krathxi and Zorak fleets attacked because they thought they were facing helpless prey. They didn't expect serious resistance. If they knew that every Confederation vessel was protected by human military might, they would think twice about attacking. Over the following days, the negotiations continued. Representatives from dozens of Confederation species arrived to meet with the humans and evaluate their proposal. Some were skeptical of humanity's militaristic approach, while others were fascinated by human technology and tactics. The breakthrough came when the humans demonstrated their commitment to peaceful cooperation. Instead of demanding territory or resources, they requested only the right to establish defensive stations along Confederation trade routes and the sharing of scientific data that could benefit both civilizations. Dr. Sarah Kim, the human fleet's chief scientist, worked directly with Veltar researchers to decode the quantum communication technology that had created the dimensional broadcast. The collaboration proved that humans and Confederation species could work together effectively. Captain ZXHY, Dr. Kim explained as they studied the repaired quantum crystal array, your communication system is actually far more advanced than ours in some ways. The dimensional resonance effect that caused the accidental broadcast could be refined and used for instant communication across galactic distances. You mean our accident could become a breakthrough in communication technology? More than that, replied Dr. Kim excitedly. If we can control the dimensional resonance, we could create a communication network that spans multiple galaxies. Think of the scientific discoveries we could share, the coordinated exploration we could accomplish. The final alliance treaty was signed aboard the Gentle Current, which had been chosen as the symbolic location where human and Confederation cooperation had first begun. The ceremony was attended by representatives from 37 Confederation species and the entire human diplomatic corps. Admiral Chen and Ambassador Kelvash stood together as the documents were formally ratified. Admiral, said the ambassador, I must admit that when we first met, I was concerned about humanity's aggressive reputation. But you've shown us that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive. Ambassador, your people have shown us something equally valuable, replied Admiral Chen. You've reminded us that the ultimate goal of strength is to protect those who cannot protect themselves. This alliance will make both our civilizations stronger. Captain ZXHY watched the ceremony with deep satisfaction. What had begun as a desperate distress call had become the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. The accidental signal that had nearly resulted in his crew's death had instead created the strongest alliance in known space. But the real test came 6 months later, when long-range sensors detected a massive Krathxi hive fleet moving toward Confederation space. The bioships numbered in the hundreds, clearly intent on harvesting the peaceful species they had identified during the earlier battle. The response was swift and decisive. Human and Confederation vessels moved together in perfect coordination, combining human military might with Confederation scientific precision. The new quantum communication network allowed instant coordination across light years of space. The HFY hive fleet found itself facing not helpless prey, but a unified force that had been preparing for their arrival. Human kinetic weapons were guided by Confederation targeting systems that could predict bioship regeneration patterns. Confederation shield technology was powered by human fusion reactors that could maintain defensive fields indefinitely. The battle lasted 3 days and ended with the complete destruction of the HFY hive fleet. More importantly, it sent a clear message throughout the galaxy. Peaceful species were no longer defenseless prey. Word of the Alliance spread quickly through interstellar communication networks. Predator species began avoiding regions of space where human and Confederation forces operated together. Peaceful civilizations started requesting membership in the expanding alliance, seeking the protection and scientific cooperation it offered. Within 2 years, the Human Confederation Alliance had grown to include over 100 species across 40 star systems. The galaxy was beginning to change as peaceful exploration became possible in regions that had been dominated by predators for millennia. Captain HFY, now promoted to Admiral of Confederation Fleet Operations, often reflected on the chain of events that had started with a simple distress call. His broken communicator had accidentally created the strongest force for peace and cooperation the galaxy had ever seen. Standing on the bridge of his new flagship, a hybrid vessel combining human and Confederation technology, Admiral HFY watched as joint exploration fleets prepared for their next mission. They would travel farther into unknown space than any peaceful expedition had ever attempted, protected by human military escorts and equipped with the most advanced scientific equipment both civilizations could provide. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of wonders waiting to be discovered. And now, for the first time in galactic history, peaceful species had the strength to explore those wonders without fear. The accidental distress call had become something far greater than anyone could have imagined, a beacon of hope that would shine across the stars for generations to come.